to winning, never to lose. When we talk about vacation, though, it's always a cruise. It's Tony and Tommy with a TNT schmooze. Cruise Talk Weekly and we lighten the fuse.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Cruise Talk Weekly with Tommy
and Tony, where each week we give you our take on the hottest topics in cruising. What do you think, Tommy? Is that better than last week's intro, or?
I think it's better, and it's just going to keep getting better. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing pretty good, man. We're here. It's a Sunday, almost. Well, you know what? I feel good because I've reclaimed an hour from the universe. Very, very rarely do I get to stick it to the universal man. But last night, by just actually, it happened automatically with my technology, and now I've got a whole extra hour. So I don't know what I'm going to. It's almost like a rip in the fabric of time.
You're right. The universe giveth, but they also taketh away. It will be getting darker earlier as we explain to you how daylight savings time works today, I guess, on a Monday.
So I really don't know how it works. So what you're saying is because of the change of the time, the amount of light that I'm exposed to on a daily basis will be altered. I mean, isn't it the same amount of light?
In general, probably the same amount of light, but a lot of that other light is going to come during, prime time. You know what I mean? You're going to lose an hour when you'd most want the extra hour towards the end of the day, unfortunately.
All I know is I got an extra hour, and I feel dang excited about it. Look, it's a crazy Sunday, and it's been a crazy week in cruising. Let's talk about this story that still has my head scratching. We go to Australia. We go to a small cruise line, Coral Expeditions. We go to their cruise ship, the Coral Adventurer, and they sell this circumnavigation of Australia for $60,000. I don't know if it's Australian dollars or US dollars. And we find a lady that is, 80 years old that takes this very luxury, expensive cruise. Very first port stop, they get off to do a very famous hike at Lizard Island near the Great Barrier Reef. And it's a little cloudy as to what happened, but somewhere along the hike, the lady takes ill, and they tell her just to go back down the mountain. And apparently the tour guide doesn't go with her. And that tour company, they finish their whole tour, and then everybody goes back to the cruise ship, and the cruise ship leaves. And about 6 p.m. that night, somebody goes, "Hey, where's that lady that was on the hike with us?" And she never returned to the cruise ship. And unfortunately, they sent out a search party. The cruise ship comes back. They send out a search party, and they find the lady deceased. That's the nuts and bolts of the story. But how do you leave somebody on an excursion like that?
This seems like it was handled. And again, I can't throw judgment because, again, a lot of times with these stories, you're seeing a lot of things at face value. You don't necessarily get all the details. But at face value, like we mentioned, this seems to be handled pretty much as bad as you can around every corner. First of all, we all have elderly people in our lives, and you think about grandmas and stuff like that. And this woman was 80 years old, and she was clearly having a few obstacles and a little bit of trouble with this hike. Now, if there's one thing, whether it's urban central areas or remote nature destinations, the one thing I always try to tell people at any age whatsoever is always have someone else with you. Always kind of work at a buddy system as old as time. But yeah, it's real. For the advice to be, or not advice to be, I guess the instructions to be, okay, you better head back to the ship to an 80-year-old woman on a hike that's challenging when you already know her health is compromised at that particular time. Nobody knew the level of seriousness, but not good at all. That's the first problem to me, sending her back to the ship by herself unaccompanied. Even if it wasn't the instructor, Tony, somebody should have went with her. Somebody should have volunteered to go with her.
Yeah. So let's play that out. So say, I don't know how big the tour group was, but maybe you're the only tour guide. And so say it's 20 people, say it's 10 people. So 9 are fine. 1 is ill. Does everybody have to give up their day to get the one down the mountain? I mean, I think at its most core, yes, would be the answer. But we know how things work in the real world. Are you really going to look at 9 other people and say, look, we need to take her back? Or do you think, and I think she fell somewhere along the way, like fell off of a cliff. So I guess, again, a lot of this is speculation, but maybe the guy thought, okay, she can easily make the traverse back down. But that would, if you're a tour guide, and again, we don't know the numbers there, but that would weigh heavily on my mind. Like, okay, I sent this lady back. I don't see her at the landing here. I don't see her on the bus. Where's she at? That's a weird breakdown for me that didn't happen. And then the other weird thing for me is that the cruise ship left without knowing she wasn't on the cruise ship. Now, we both of you and I, we cruise on these larger cruise lines, these more mainstream cruise lines where they're counting every passenger that leaves the cruise ship, and then they're doing their reconciliation count for every passenger coming back on, and they'll start making announcements over the live stream or over the loudspeaker like, hey, so-and-so, please report to guest services because you're not on the cruise ship. It doesn't seem like they counted the people coming back on the cruise ship, which seems like that would be a fundamental thing for any type of cruise ship travel, is to count the people on and off of the cruise ship, regardless of the size.
Yeah. I again, another unexplainable aspect to this story. Either they didn't count or they miscounted. We don't know what happened. But just like I said, getting back to the just accompaniment thing, I wouldn't be able to. It's empathy. We could all, I guess, identify with situations that we're in where we're feeling, vulnerable or it's dangerous or whatever else it is. I wouldn't be able to enjoy the rest of that hike knowing I just sent an 80-year-old woman back down the mountain. So I would think if this was anywhere like maybe, yeah, of course you're going to have a few people that, yeah, she'll be fine. Nobody was going to volunteer. So I would have absolutely had to have, made that decision to kind of abandon the hike. Oh, well, you know what? I'll get back there another time. How great is the view going to be? How much are you going to enjoy this, worrying if this woman's going to be okay or not? And I didn't know that. So that was it. So she wasn't feeling well, and then there was a fall, like a deep fall.
Yeah, I think that was one of the final things that I read, is that they found her after she'd fallen off a cliff. So I think potentially on the walk down, it went poorly.
And you just imagine the people that she has at home. Her daughter was kind of weighing in on the whole situation, and it's just a nightmare scenario for anybody. But yeah, I don't get how they're, several hours out of port, right? They were at dinner, and then someone realized. What was the aha moment that they realized, oh, shoot, we're short one passenger?
Yeah, I wonder if it was like a table mate or something like that. Because, again, it seems like they would have reconciled the roles before they left the cruise area. But, or yeah, maybe a cabin stir. A lot of that stuff happens, right? I think there's so many mechanisms on board that we don't recognize as mechanisms. Yeah, classically, you've heard somebody say, I like to leave my do not disturb sign on the door for 4 or 5 days of my cruise, and then inevitably security's knocking on my door to make sure I'm alive. That's part of the standard operating procedure on cruise ships, and I don't think everybody understands that. So it could be, maybe the room steward realizes she's not back, or she's been at dinner every night, and this is pretty early on in the cruise. And then, I haven't been able to verify it, so I'm hesitant to bring it up, but somebody said that cruise has now been canceled because of this. Australia cruise canceled. I'm just looking it up in real time.
Yeah, I heard that same
cruise
thing.
Canceled. Yeah, cruise canceled following death of woman left behind on island. That's a whole wild thing too. Think about the amount of people that have paid that $60,000. It's probably devastating, to a small group of people, only 120 people on board. All of a sudden, if you know that you're a part of that kind of scenario, maybe it does sour your vacation.
Of course, it definitely does. I mean, the two takeaways here for me are A, always have somebody with you if you're going to do anything that's kind of adventurous, and don't no matter your age or health, just always have somebody, what do they witness? Witnesses help. Witnesses deter any bad activity from happening. And if you see somebody who is having some trouble, put your vacation, put the experience, as magical as it might be, put it aside for a little while and kind of exercise the proper humanity and make sure that they get back to the ship okay. Because it sounds like this is something that was pretty avoidable, no?
It does. It really does. I mean, again, it's, I think if somebody would have been with her or something to escort her down, I think it probably would have been a whole different story. You bring up a good point, though, because I do this often. I will venture out solo, and I think a lot of people do. I think there's a lot of people that do solo travel. And, again, I mean, it's a challenge because I always believe that as long as you are carrying yourself in a way that you seem to be where you're supposed to be, that everything will be okay. But what do you do when you get out and about? Like, I was thinking, what could this lady have done buddy system wise on the cruise? Like, I do think that I think if you're by yourself, you almost have to go to that tour guide and say, look, I'm by myself. And if for some reason I don't show back up later in the day, please, sound the alarm. I almost think you have to do that as a solo traveler. But the problem for us is I think you and I are happy to walk around the streets in a lot of places. Sometimes I don't even give it a second thought. Do you engage any kind of practices when you're just hitting the streets solo traveling?
I think a lot of times, and you'll probably agree with this, the younger you are, the more invincibility you think you have. And it kind of I got hit straight in the face with this in the Dominican Republic. There's this amazing mountain that's very, very close to the port, to Puerto Plata. And they do, basically, it was right after COVID. They have those cable cars that go up there. But I wanted to get up to the top of that mountain at any means necessary, so I did. I walked off the Tiano Bay, the cruise area, and I found a cab that would take me up there. Well, it was a guy who took me and walked me over to a cab. The cab driver was sleeping, didn't speak any English. They had an exchange. I guess it was communicated that I wanted to see the top of that mountain. And about 10 minutes in, I probably realized this is not the best idea. This guy who I can't communicate with can take me anywhere and surround me with people and weapons that I have no control over. And gladly, everything worked out well. But it really, really made me think in that moment that even though it worked out fine, that was probably not the best decision. Now, when you're walking around the cruise port in Aruba, you're walking around Nassau, and there's a high level of population density around, you're fine, absolutely. But anytime you're going into remote places, whether it's urban or nature, yes, I would say from now on, I am going to make sure that I have some sort of a connection to to anybody. And it doesn't, and I'm not even saying it has to be a person you came on the ship with. Somebody who is going to be a witness who seems okay. That will decrease your chances or decrease the chances of anything horrible happening.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out, as we always do, these are exceptions to the rule. These aren't the norm, but life is funny like that, and sometimes these kind of challenges come up. This is just a sad, tragic story. It's really unbelievable that and sometimes nothing's perfect, so sometimes things do break down. But I think there's going to continue to be a lot of questions as to the actions of the tour company or tour guide and the ship. But so it's wild that cruise is canceled.
What do you think? That's what I was going to ask you just now. Under what conditions or what basis of reasoning do you think they say? Because we know, as horrible and tragic as this is, we lose people on cruise ships. They just don't. They're just gone. The cruise always goes on. You know what I mean? What do you think were, I guess, specific about this situation where the cruise was actually canceled? The first thing that would come to mind is that, to me, and I don't know if this is true or not, that there was just an identification of negligence on the cruise line, and they're being told to cancel it. I don't know. What do you think?
So I'm just looking at this article that was published by the BBC, and basically the CEO of Coral Expeditions said that the cruise had been canceled due to the tragic passing of Suzanne Rees, which is the lady we've been talking about, and previous mechanical issues. Everybody would be issued a full refund, and they're trying to coordinate the return journeys of passengers via chartered flights. Yeah, maybe it's just too much heat, man, or maybe just too much attention. And I don't know what the previous mechanical issues.
Mechanical issues? That's kind of bizarre, no?
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. Yeah, wow. Another, I don't know if there's anything else to say about that story, but another weird one. Did you hear about this lady that was on the Taylor Swift cruise that went overboard? And now the family is they're suing Royal Caribbean based on the circumstances of her going overboard. You've been tracking with that one?
Yeah, it's another interesting one. The reason it's back in the news, I guess, is because the lawsuit was just filed, and they're going straight at policy here. They're going straight at, the drink package being a thing that they think should be eradicated. They don't think that, and it is interesting because this is not going to be like a huge monetary windfall for them. We know about the what is it? The Sea at Sea Act or something like that. Was it?
Yeah, there's a law that prohibits the amount of damages in lawsuits. I can't remember the exact name of it, but yeah.
But they're trying to, I guess, basically say that, and I'm not making light of this at all, but they said, she was served 7 drinks in 6 hours. I'm like, that's a warm up round, where I'm at. But like, it's you always have to be careful when you're covering these types of story because it is tragedy, it is loss, it is pain. But at the same time, there's something out there called personal accountability, and people who, it's interesting, does this affect? They seem to be saying, the lawyer is saying, we will consider this a win if the policy of being able to serve open bars for a price is eradicated. And I'm like, what about all the people who do exercise personal responsibility and can handle the situation where they want to get a good deal, right?
Yeah. I was thinking about that, there's this idea of, do you make solutions for the exceptions or do you manage the exceptions? And this is certainly an exception. Millions of drink packages are sold every year that don't have the same outcome. It's certainly tragic. So you got to figure out, the thing that'll be decided in court is whether or not Royal Caribbean was negligent. The 2 points of contention is that first, that she was overserved, and to bolster the idea of that her being overserved is that drink packages encourage people to drink more so that they get their money's worth. There's also suggestion that potentially drink packages exist and servers serve you more so that they can make more tips. And then the second point of contention is whether or not Royal Caribbean actually searched for this lady. The daughter is contending, and the lawsuit is contending that Royal did not search for the person who went overboard, which would be very far outside what is normal, because every overboard story I have ever covered includes a big part of search and rescue, that the cruise ship stops, that the cruise ship turns, that they look for the person that went in the water. But they're saying in this case, or the alleged actions are that they did not search. So it's hard because, working in, I don't know if you had to go through it, but when I worked in restaurants, we had to get our ABC card, which allowed us to serve people alcohol. And a big part of that is, how to prevent over serving people, because certainly on the cruise ship you're not going to have people drinking and driving, but in restaurants we would. And to protect the restaurant from liability, that as the server on the front line taking people drinks, you would have to make sure that you weren't over serving people. I would, if you told me somebody had 7 drinks in 6 hours on a cruise ship, do you think they've been overserved? I would say no, but so much of that over-serving thing is analyzing the person that has the drinks. So the daughter was saying this is the drunkest she'd ever seen the mother, and she was slurring her speech, and she was having trouble walking and that kind of thing. It raises a great question, and the question may be more around, when do you stop serving people alcohol on cruise ships? But the idea that the drink package is causing people to overdrink, that's a stretch to me. And maybe that's the path that the legal system, the attorney is trying to use to make inroads. But again, it's like drinking is a part of cruising, and drinking responsibly, part of that is on the person. But, once you get inebriated, do you lose your faculties to be responsible? This one's sad. The other weird component of this story, the way the daughter tells the story, is somebody helped them back to their cabin. She was in the room and she noticed her mom was going out onto the balcony because that's where they were keeping their luggage. That's weird. That I don't know anybody that's keeping their luggage on the balcony, but maybe they were new cruisers. They didn't know to put it under the bed. And so she just thought her mom was going to go get some clothes. And then when she looked up, her mom was on the rail and she fell over. So I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting. And I've already had some people, when I talked about it earlier this week, some people saying, well, we should be more sympathetic to the people and not so in the defense of the cruise corporation. But, that's the way life works sometimes. I mean, it's a sad tragedy, and the courts will definitely determine who's right, who's wrong here, I guess. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think drink packages and make people drink more just to get their money's worth?
First of all, two things can be true at one time. We can analyze the, I guess the legitimacy of what we think they're trying to accomplish with the lawsuit, and we could also have complete and total sympathy for the family and everybody. So
it's super sad.
Yeah, so we what we do is we analyze these things and we kind of talk about the industry, and a lot of these things can have or potentially have long-term changes to policies on cruise ships. So I think it is fair for us to discuss it in that term as well. And like you said, I think you touched on hitting the nail on the head. You hear the buzzwords. And by the way, the statements come out, you can get an understanding of how they're trying to attack the case or how they're trying to plead their case. And yes, they are saying they seem to be putting a lot of emphasis on the feeling like you have to get your money's worth. And that's where they think they're going. They're trying to hold that angle really good. But then going on what you just said, as far as being outside, putting luggage and keeping luggage on the balcony is not something I've ever heard of anybody doing. You're subject to a lot of weather and you damage, moisture, mildew, whatever. And the craziest thing to me is, listen, we're talking about Jack Daniels. We're talking about Tito's. We're talking about Crown Royal. We're not talking about PCP or Angel Dust. Why? I don't know anybody who's been drunk and I've seen some drunk people. I've never seen anybody drunk to the level where they thought they could sit on the edge of their balcony with their feet dangling over. That to me, that's not alcohol. That's a hallucinogenic drug or something like that. That's going to have you doing that. I don't know. I'm not saying she was doing that, but that seems bizarre to me. I've never heard of anything like that where a woman in her 60s thinks that it's okay just because she had a few drinks, just because she had 7 drinks in 6 hours. Okay, you know what? Let's give this balcony railing stability a run for its money. I've never seen that or heard of it.
No, and it's like you said, it's just a tragic situation. The family of that woman still, like, they're just trying to find answers and trying to find some satisfaction when unfortunately both of those things may never come, which is horrible. I mean, like you said, it's horrible for the family, but the problem is, and when it comes to litigation and stuff like that, lawyers are just going to go at it, right? The cruise companies have a lot of lawyers, and of course the guy that's suing them's kind of a big time lawyer. So, it's going to be interesting to see, whether or not this will change the nature of the, a drink package. But it leaves an interesting open question in my mind. What kind of training do possibly these cruise lines do to make sure that guests aren't overserved? Again, we did it in the restaurant primarily because we didn't want anybody drinking and driving, but a lot of challenging things can happen on a cruise ship, and a lot of those come on the tail end of over alcohol consumption, whether it be fighting or being vulnerable to victimization. A lot of things go on. So do the cruise lines play any role of saying, all right, this person's had too much? I told this story before. There was a guy that was completely inebriated at the blackjack table to the point where he couldn't hold his head up, and they would have to nudge him to make his decisions for the cards, and then they would have to remind him every time to wave it or tap it, what you do in blackjack. They cut him off from alcohol. They cut him off finally, but they did not cut him off from charging money to his room. So he could still take a grand on the tip, right? Just, they put a piece of paper and he would sign it. They give him more chips and he would lose. So there's some wild stuff that goes on, man. I got one. It was good that they cut him off.
On a Norwegian getaway cruise I was on to Bermuda, we had a guy, very nice guy, was drinking heavily. By day 3, there were, I don't know, calls to his room, Romeo, Oscar, whatever the calls are, to his room. We found that it was him. He fell. He was a hazard to himself by day 4, falling all over the place. And they took his drinking privileges away. They took his free at sea away. But at the same time, this guy apparently really liked to drink. He bought like 8 bottles of liquor while he was on board. They delivered them on the last day. They brought him to his room. I guess that's the policy. I've never bought liquor on a ship. So they let him, and he had one hell of a last night. Let's put it that way. But I think the final thing to talk about, or it's fair to mention regarding this case, is the that particular act, the At Sea Act or whatever it is, the legal, where it kind of limits the amount of money or financial gain you can get from a lawsuit. I think what it basically does is take away all the, whatever it is, things around pain and suffering or anything like that. It's mostly geared towards limiting what you can get towards wages lost. Like if that person was a provider for the family and there was going to be future wages lost from that, or any type of income that would happen, or any direct loss of money that you would get from that person losing their lives, that would be the only way you could sue. You can't be like, you know what, this was awful and this caused us pain and suffering and emotional damage. That was so I guess for that regard, I guess that's a feather in their cap in this whole story, in that they really are going after policy. They're apparently not going to receive some life-changing amount of money.
Right. I think it goes back to the idea of trying to answer those challenging questions that the family has, the why, what was the purpose of it all? How do we redeem the situation to make it better for others? So it's definitely a noble cause. Yeah. I can't remember the name of that law either, but yeah, to your point, what you were saying is you can ask for medical expenses, which I saw the attorney talking about this. Of course, there are none, and there was something else, but yeah, you're right. There's no pain and suffering inside of that at all. It's going to be interesting to watch this play out, and we'll definitely talk about it as more and more information comes out. The other big story that was kind of rocking cruising this week was Hurricane Melissa and the impacts that Hurricane Melissa had down in the Caribbean, particularly in Jamaica and Haiti and Cuba. We had a rough weekend cruising, honestly. Jamaica got rocked by the hurricane and completely shut down. I saw there was like 25,000 tourists on Jamaica that got stranded as the Montego Bay airport got shut down, and people had to struggle to get to Kingston, to the only airport that was up. And then I think Melissa finished its week up there, messing up Bermuda a little bit. And all of that resulted in cruises being impacted, and definitely cruises being impacted is secondary to the human tragedy of the hurricane. But it's an amazing thing to me that in the midst of countries being devastated by a hurricane, you have people that are safe and fat and fed and boozed up on cruise ships asking for onboard credit. Can you believe the gall of some people to say, hey, I was supposed to go to, Dunn River Falls in Jamaica, and now I can't. Can you give me $50 in onboard credit?
I always question if that is just a lack of intelligence or a lack of empathy or a lack of both. I don't know what that is, but it does. It completely boggles my mind. In general, you sign up for a cruise, there's a chance for all the variables that are in play that you might be changed. If you take a bunch of cruises, chances are some things are going to get changed. It happens all the time, especially when you're talking about a natural disaster like this. It's been on my mind the whole time, just as we kind of like delve into the Caribbean thing, and it's our favorite form of vacation. I'm always thinking about like what's going on down there, and one interesting thing to me is when I hear the warnings for hurricanes. What do our weathermen say? What do they say to us? They say, get out of there, go to this place, go to a shelter, go here, go there. I was listening to Caribbean weather. The instructions are a lot different, Tony. The instructions are, if you have a pot or a kettle in your home, put it on your head. There's nowhere for them to go. If you end up in a situation where you think it went away for a little while, that means you're in the eye of the storm. You have 20 minutes to remove some mattresses on top of your person. You have 20 minutes or so to kind of get yourself into a better situation, whether it's going somewhere or strengthening or reinforcing some of the stuff around you. It's a lot different. I mean, we're in Florida. As bad as the hurricane activity is here, we always have some lead time, and we can get the heck out of there. These people have nowhere to go, Tony.
Yeah, and they just have to ride it out and then see come what may. The other thing about these islands is they're super resilient. The tourism minister in Jamaica already said that the tourist spots are going to be reopened by the 15th of December. So he's putting a little 6 weeks short window on it to bring people back. Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we forget how fortunate we are, and then when you start seeing it play out in other places, you realize that yeah, some people are just things that are bad to us are triply bad to other people. So
It's been happening all over, and I'm seeing people who were in. I saw a video of someone at the Rio, an all inclusive, and they were just complaining. They were like, "What? You're going to give us bag?" They're walking around post hurricane in their fancy kimono robes, walking around the property, complaining about the fact that they're only getting a bagged lunch. And I'm like, this is, I mean, a certain level of just disconnect that I can't relate to, out of control.
It's insane, and I don't know. Maybe people just don't get embarrassed anymore, but I would just be embarrassed to be complaining about something happened, during a natural disaster. Somebody was pushing back against the language that Carnival used, like, in an attempt to keep you safe and to keep your cruise as comfortable and smooth as possible, we will be avoiding the area that the storm is impacting so that we can have 4 more trivias and, feed you 8 buffets. And people are like, well, this is crap, man. I paid to go to Jamaica. You're going to take me through the storm or something. I don't know what people are thinking. Like, just because you pay to go to Jamaica doesn't mean the captain can like magically put a bubble around Jamaica so that I don't know, man. I struggle sometimes. Because I don't know if you have the same thing, but because we do what we do, sometimes I'm the de facto complaint department on the cruise ship. So I might be on a cruise and somebody will come up and tell me how bad their dinner was in the main dining room, or somebody will complain about the weather. And it takes everything for me not to look at some folks and just go, what are you talking about? Are you, I don't want to be mean, but are you insane? I sometimes I get a little cagey about it, and they'll be complaining about dinner and I'll be like, what exactly was it? Was it the worst meal you ever had?
Yeah, I have to correct myself too. I'm the same way. I listen to people complain and say this was all like, what? First of all, it's not that bad. First of all, none of it it's as bad as you're making it out to be. And second of all, like I mean, why not look at it in the most positive way you can? And then I say to myself, well, you know what? Maybe I'm doing what they're doing. Maybe I'm like, they like to go on vacation and cry and complain about how that's their form of vacation. So maybe I should just be like, oh, I hope you enjoyed your week of complaining. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed your 3 days of dissatisfaction. Back to work. There you go, I guess.
Well, none of us are completely evolved to the top of the mountain or whatever. So I know, in the same vein that I'm like, listen to all these people complain. If you put me in the right circumstance with the right set of things, I'll complain. So I know I'm not immune to it, but I think collectively we've got to help each other be like, okay, it's not really that bad. Most everything in life is like that too. There's always 2 paths. I can take a path of positivity, which sounds a little hippy dippy, or I can take the path of negativity, which is easy to do. And so I do try to encourage people to try to figure out the positive side of things, because again, you can walk both paths. It's going to take, almost the same amount of energy, and the outcomes are 100% different. If you live in negativity for long periods of time, it's going to eat you up. And, the worst part about being positive all the time, people just think you're stupid, but it's one of those things.
You got to give us credit, Tony. We're all over the map here. Last week, you can come at us for all your chair hog conversations, and then this week we're dealing with tragedy, and we're dealing with natural disasters and stuff like that. Anything else out there that's a little bit lighter that we could dive into? Or
maybe there's some lighter stuff, but I do want to address that show last week. I mean, we did get some hate comments. They say that we don't look at the camera enough. So do you want to take a second and we'll look right into the camera?
How are you? It's way worse. I can't help it. I listen to the comments and read and look at stuff, and I'm like, I immediately, when I got home, I was like, let me watch like 6 or 7 conversation style podcasts. And I'm like,
nobody's looking at the camera. What are we talking about?
Anybody looking directly at the camera when they're talking to somebody else. Yeah. If it's a one-on-one, if you're saying, hey, welcome, like you look at the camera when you're doing your regular show, right?
Yeah. But I know I have to. Like, I just know I have to. But, most of the time when we're talking, I'm trying to look at you and you're on my screen, and that's not where my camera is.
I will try to check in every once in a while so as to not be, I don't want to creep anybody out.
Yeah. I didn't get too much chair hog hate last week, too. I think that's a universal. Like, if we're looking for the bad guys of cruising, I think the chair hog, I don't think there's too many people. I mean, there's always the person that I don't know that this is indicative that a person is a chair hog, but when people are overly defensive about it, like they have 12 scenarios, like what if I went to get a swirls ice cream and then the guy's burger that I ate ripped my stomach up and I had to go to the bathroom and that took longer than I thought it was going to. And then on the way back out, my wife said I had to go get suntan lotion and then I got back to my chair. Is it reasonable for me to save my chair at that point? I'm like, man, surely you protest too much, man. You must be a chair hog in disguise over there. But I think most universally people are they're against the chair hog.
Yeah, we can all basically agree on that. I saw that and I was kind of pumped, but a little bit kind of like thrown off. My beloved, it's weird. Like we look at these cruise ships and we kind of personify them a little bit sometimes, and we share some of our incredible memories on them. And I was thinking so remember after the pandemic when all those ships were kind of, going to scrap. And I couldn't help but think well, it's a ship. It's an inanimate object. But what if you got married on that ship? You know what I mean? What if you got married on these certain ships? But I kind of think of the Norwegian Gem as to me, the Norwegian Gem, I always joke that if it could talk, it would have a Brooklyn accent. It would have a New York accent because it spent so much time in New York. But I'm also kind of hyped with the fact that it's going to Jacksonville. And it's just been a kind of like a one-man show in Jacksonville with Carnival. And now the Norwegian Gem is going to be in Jacksonville just up the road from us. So I think that's kind of cool. I mean, we're not talking about the newest, latest, and greatest in hardware, but it is another option for the people of Northeast Florida to cruise.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't know you were nostalgic for the Jewel. Did you ever sail her out of New York?
It's the Gem, right?
Or the Gem. I get it wrong. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. At least 5 times. And I spent so one was a 10-day cruise. I did I believe one of the last cruises to nowhere on the Gem. My 4th overall ever cruises on the Gem. It is a great ship. It is very, very intimate. It gives you what you like, which is a very nice ship. It's got all the amenities that you'd want on it, but it's also small and easy to navigate. It's a beautiful little ship, but it's not the icon of the seas, obviously.
I've been. I don't know what class it's in, but I've been on the NCL Dawn out of Tampa, which is also a small ship that I think services the same kind of smaller market. Yeah. I like the fact that it's going to Jacksonville. We see Norwegian making some interesting home port choices. They're going to sail out of Philadelphia next year, which really hasn't been done in over 20 years. But any of these cruise ports that you can get multiple choices, I think is just a win on top of a win, because I've met people that will sell on the same ship over and over just because of the ship's close to their house, right? You'll meet somebody that's like, oh, I've been on the Paradise 18 times out of Tampa because that's where the Paradise is. And so I would love the fact if I was, Jacksonville or Northern Georgia, and this is, I sailed out of there every time, to now have a second ship. It is interesting, this idea of memories trapped in a space. I wish we had that technology, because I bet you there's a million people that have cruised on the Gem. I don't know how many people that it holds, but over a 20-year service, you're going to probably got 500,000 people. And if somehow you could replay all of their memories from those spots on the ship, that would be fascinating. Are you tempted, since it's that close? Yes. I mean, Jacksonville's a bit of a drive, right, from you, but I'm about 3 hours from Jacksonville. It would be cool to go out of there.
I would do it. It's just, it's also a thing with New York too. New Yorkers have a connection with, because a lot of times New Yorkers, they don't go to Florida. They don't sail out of anywhere but New York. And I'm sure that's true with a lot of home port people, but particularly in New York, you're sailing out of maybe 2 or 3 cruise ships that exist there, 3 or 4 cruise ships that exist there. And yes, you do kind of get a little bit of an affection. And I know many people who solo travel or travel with a couple of people, and they all reunite. And the Gem was a great ship for that. And Bermuda is a great destination. It's almost like a club, like the Bermuda Club, the Gem Club, and that's a big thing sailing from New York. I am definitely tempted to at some point go up to Jacksonville. I was kind of cool and tickled by watching the coverage of the local Jacksonville news. They were celebrating it. You would have thought, the Star of the Seas was coming into town by the way they celebrate it. But I do get it. I do get the fact they describe the Norwegian Gem. It's got multiple dining options, bars, pool. It's got pool. Tony, would you believe this cruise ship has actual swimming pools? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do think it's cool though. If I see the right cruise at the right price, I would definitely make the 4.5 hour trek up to Jacksonville.
It does. I mean, it does show you that, cruising's a big deal for local economies. We've watched Mobile wring its hands for a couple of years, just saying, "Hey, look, man, we got this terminal here. Can we get a year-round cruise?" And they're finally getting a year-round cruise in 2027. That was the first cruise port I ever went out of. And so it's definitely a boon for those cities that can get that cruise business. If we even try to comprehend what's going on in Galveston over the last few years, as the infrastructure continues to grow there and cruise terminals grow there and cruise ships go there, it's a legit thing. I think it's funny you talk about the Gem having maybe a New York accent. That Carnival Jubilee definitely has a South Texas accent. That ship feels like Texas. It's a wild thing. Look, I don't want to go. I don't want to go too far off the script, but I did watch Donnie Brasco for the first time. Have you ever seen this movie? The classic Johnny Depp Al Pacino movie.
There's no worse guy out there. That's the guy that says when you haven't seen the movie, and then the response is, "Wait, yeah." But I'm almost that guy right now. You just saw Donnie Brasco for the first time. Let's not focus on that. Let's focus.
I don't know why it took me so long to see it. I don't know where I missed it at, but it was fascinating. And then I had to run to YouTube and see how accurate it was, that kind of thing. But I was definitely in a New York state of mind after watching that. So now I'm just doing the mental exercise of seeing all those people in Donnie Brasco on the NCL Gem.
Which took a lot of liberties in that movie. Lefty Ruggiero was not, well, we don't have to get into that. That's a separate thing. It's great movie. Phenomenal. Joe Pistone was recently on Joe Rogan a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And that he kind of told that story. And where the takeaway there is how close he got with Johnny Depp during the filming of that movie.
Oh, that's wild. I thought that was a great role for Johnny Depp. I don't know where I can't, like, when I started thinking of great Johnny Depp roles, I can't think of any recently that jump out in my mind, but there's a lot of good young Johnny Depp roles. Yeah, I don't know. It was a good Pacino role too. We do have to make a bit of an announcement. So, we have this is the Cruise Talk Weekly podcast, and so we are primarily an audio podcast, and so hopefully you're listening to us in your car or while you're working out or while you're not paying attention to something else. But and we exist on all the places where podcasts are, like the Apple Podcast and Spotify, iHeartRadio, all of that. We do have a video version of this, and we referenced that earlier while we were looking into the camera, but we're breaking up. We're breaking up with the Cruise Talk Network. We're saying sayonara, and we're venturing out on our own to a brand new YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel is called Cruise Talk Weekly. So we're making a fresh start, and we would love, the folks that are already loving it. There's a lot of you guys listening. And so if you are loving the podcast in audio form, please come over and check it out in video form. Once a week, you're going to get the full podcast. We think that's the way it's going to play out, but we also want to pepper in some other content that we're trying to figure out. So our goal, as always, is to inform and to entertain you and to keep you pleasantly connected to cruising. And so not only can you do that in your ears on the podcast, but you can do it with your eyes on the YouTube channel. So come over and subscribe to Cruise Talk Weekly on YouTube. And Cruise Talk Network, thanks for all the support for the last 8 episodes.
Tony, and they can now get to us, right? They can.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we solved the email problem. So if you got a question, and you can put your feedback in there too, but we wanted to make it simple. If you got a question for Tommy or I, or for the show, you can send us an email at questions@cruisetalkweekly.net. We couldn't get the .com, Tommy. I don't know who's got that, but cruisetalkweekly.net, questions@cruisetalkweekly.net. And, if the question is, any question right now, we'll get it on the show. So if you want to be a superstar, write us some crazy question and we'll do our best to answer it. From, analyzing $2 bills to anything. We can do it all, from how to look into a camera. Just send us your feedback or your questions, and we'll
be ready for the merch drop.
Yeah. The $2 bill merch drop.
Yeah.
I'm a tipper. This is just the tip. That's what it should say. This is just
Donnie Brasco hanging off the back of Norwegian Gem.
Donnybrook. I don't know how that guy didn't get killed. I mean, again, I don't know how that whole story played out, but that seemed. Well, I got more to say about it, but I'll tell you later. There's one aspect of that I don't think I should talk about here. But what else is going on? Royal Caribbean making moves. Oh, let me tell you about this. There's a guy on TikTok. Unfortunately, I only know people by the moniker "There's a guy" or "I saw this person." I don't remember the account name, but he got me. This guy does cruise news, and he said, wow, it happened. Carnival has acquiesced. Carnival is backing off their rewards program. They're no longer going to do rewards program, but they've made 2 new loyalty levels, Platinum Plus and Double Diamond or something like that. And he went about 25 seconds of a 40-second video before he played the Rickroll. Then he Rickrolled, right? You know, never gonna give you up. So he laid it out there. But I was like, holy crap, how did I miss this news? Carnival actually changed their mind. And but it wasn't really clear in his video that it was a prank. He just went to a Rickroll and then it went off. And then I guess people started hating on him. He was losing subscribers and stuff like that. And it just goes to show you how invested people are in this loyalty program. So famously, Carnival teased that they would be changing their loyalty program. And then they come out and they go, here's the big change. Everybody's going to lose their loyalty. And now if you don't spend money, we don't care about you. And that was not well received, shockingly. And so Royal Caribbean's been making some changes of their own. Last year, they did the status match where you can match your status between their cruise brands. If you got status at Royal, you can match it as Celebrity, you can match it as Silver Sea. Well, this announcement's a little wacky because it's a little bit of a tease announcement. All the details are not there. But now they say that you can apply your cruise points across the brands. Have you gotten into this, or do you have any handle on what this means?
Yeah, no, I just saw that you are able to now, use it across the other cruise lines that are associated with the Royal Caribbean brand. You could do Celebrity. I mean, again, I think it is. I think you saw Virgin Voyages do it. A little bit of a reaction and a little bit of them showing that, you know what, we're not like Carnival out here. We're not going to, hinder your loyalty experiences. We're going to expand them.
I guess the way that I'm understanding that it's working is you're going to go on like a 7-day cruise on Royal, and you can decide, and I'm assuming you get 1 point per day. That's traditionally the way that it's worked. Maybe you get double if you're in a suite or something like that. But for the sake of this conversation, let's just say you get 1 point per day. 7-day cruise on Royal, 1 point per day. Apparently, you can apply that to Celebrity. And now you're going to move up the Celebrity chain. What it left me wondering is what's the best approach? So like I'm already Diamond Plus on Royal, but I'm not a very high loyalty level on Celebrity. And since they have the status match, I wonder if that means if I go on Celebrity, would it make more sense for me to pump that into my Royal Caribbean to get to the top level of Royal Caribbean? Because when I first thought about it, I was like, maybe this is the way I build my Celebrity loyalty. Every time I go on Royal, I put it in the Celebrity bucket. But since they're matching, it almost makes sense to just get to the highest I can get on one of these cruise lines. Or think about this. What about the person that's already super high on Royal? Now, every time they go on a Royal cruise, they can put those points somewhere because you can only go a certain level, right? Like once you top out, those points don't mean anything. So I think that's interesting for that person too, because they're just like, yeah, I went on another cruise, but I'm already quadruple diamond or whatever the top level is. At least now they got something they can do with their points.
Yeah, yeah. And I just think like we've talked about before, I think it's crazy. And all this stuff is good stuff. And kudos to Royal Caribbean for at least in the weeks and weeks and weeks and months and even years, we've just been hearing about what's being taken away from us left and right. And kudos to them for actually just kind of expanding something that's a little bit more advantageous to the guest. But I just don't ever think that any of these loyalty programs are worth changing the way you cruise around. And you 100% see it. You mentioned it on your show a couple of times, and you're seeing the knee-jerk reaction from Carnival people that are absolutely, you see it in the group. I'm trying to get Diamond by this date. I got to get Diamond by XYZ date. And yes, genius move by Carnival for making people book more cruises, feeling that if they don't get to a certain loyalty level, they will lose some of their advantages.
It is funny. I mean, to your point, so I'm chasing Diamond and I don't even know why. It's just a fear of missing out, right? I'm afraid it's like, well, I'm so close. Might as well be Diamond. I don't know that I'm going to get anything for it, and fortunately for me, I was able to book some, casino cruises, which makes it an easier path, a less expensive path. But yeah, it's the interesting thing though is I've run into some people that are really hardcore, like because of the way Carnival has treated the loyalty program. They're not going to cruise with loyalty. They're not going to cruise with Carnival anymore. And I don't know if that'll hold forever. But, it's one of those things. Sometimes people are just looking for an excuse, right? Sometimes you just need a catalyst for change. And maybe there were some people that say, hey, maybe I want to try another cruise line, but man, dang it, I'm loyal to Carnival. And then this happens and they go, okay, well, that was the excuse I was looking for. Maybe I'll go somewhere else. It's going to be interesting to see if it actually moves the needle, any of these loyalty programs. There's some weird stuff, though, that came out. Royal had announced their Q3 earnings this week. And while they made a good amount of money in Q3, their projection for Q4 and Q1 of next year are down, which you've seen some movement downward of their stock price. There is some question out there whether the cruise market is softening. Like, are we on the tail end of the boom? And if we are, then all of these things start to make a lot of, they all become very important. So if all of a sudden, you don't have a glut of cruisers that you can just make any kind of change that you want, and the cruiser gets back into the catbird seat where their purchasing decision really will make a company go or sink, it's going to be interesting to see how some of these changes, change can happen in more than one way.
If we're seeing a softening of the numbers at some point, do you think, I've said it on my show over and over again, that this is going to continue to happen until the market speaks? The market's the market and it's undefeated. Like, do you think there's a softening because, like, they're finally saying, how many things can you hit us over the head with? And if we get, the Carnival, they didn't announce that, the Carnival internet increase, which is that's just smart to me, I guess, in a way, because as much as I don't like it, there's a certain faction of people. The internet has just become, I don't want, whether you call it a necessity or an addiction, either way, we need it to a certain degree. But the softening of the numbers, is that because it could be because the people are finally putting their foot down? Do you think there's anything to that?
Well, I think we've been asking out loud over the last few months, and then very specifically over the last few weeks, whether cruising still is the best value for people that are traveling. And as I've asked that question to the audience several times, I've had more and more people say, "No, I don't think so. I don't even think you're right. I think that cruising is not the best value anymore." And I think if more and more people come to that conclusion, then you'll see a softening. Of course, we got big financial challenges for a lot of folks in the country too. So it could be a bunch of things that are contributing to it. And of course, the leadership of these cruise companies are going to have to figure that out. Are we seeing a weakening demand because people have less money? Or are we seeing people that actually have real spending power that are saying cruising is not a great value for us anymore? And if they land on the idea that people are saying no to cruising because they don't find it to be a great value, then I think these cruise companies will have to start making changes that make cruising more appealing again. And so it will be interesting to see if we get a year or two down the road and there's more free offerings or more included offerings, a hearkening back. But, that's business, right? When you talk about the increase of internet, the goal of the enterprise, right? If it's straight capitalism, the goal of the enterprise is to charge the most for a product that the consumer is willing to bear. And, you see price increases every year in gratuities. You see prices every year in, internet. You see everything that most of the time the cruise lines know that they compete on their published cabin rate. And so there's not a lot of messing with that. They want to publish the lowest cabin rate, but everything else that they can increase the price, as long as they keep selling it at a way that is profitable for them, those prices seem to keep going up every year. I mean, this is Carnival increases their internet. They have over the last few years in October and November, I think for like 3 or 4 years running.
Now, going back to the Royal Caribbean thing, did you see the softening? Was that happening in bookings overall, or was that profit bottom line type thing? Because we know they're continuing to build the newest, latest and greatest hardware. They're still building Oasis class ships. Did it say?
I didn't see the line items. I just saw that whatever they presented to Wall Street in their earnings call was less than the projection they had made previously, and because of that, that's caused some challenges for investors.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But look, at the same time that they're dealing with that, they're also announcing the thing that's wild to me this week. Royal made some interesting announcements this week, but one of the wildest things is they're taking their beach club concept to a place I couldn't have picked it. They're going to have a beach club in Santorini. Now, Royal Caribbean, currently, they're trying to put eight beach clubs around the world. The first one we're going to see open is, at Paradise Island there in the Bahamas. But this is a wild thing because we know cruise lines to make these private islands, Coco Cays, a Great Harvest or Great Stirrup Key, that kind of stuff. But this is a completely different concept. This is almost like they took the Mr. Sancho's concept in Cozumel and a cruise line put their brand on it, an all-inclusive kind of thing where you have to pay to go there. And now they're going to take you over to the Mediterranean. You're going to go to Santorini. The interesting thing about this beach club, though, is it's a beach club and an excursion. So you go on a tour first and then you end up at the beach club, or you go to the beach club first and you end up at the tour. They've got 8 of these beach clubs. What do you think about this beach club concept? Do you like the fact that they're going to try to outdo like a Mr. Sancho's at what Mr. Sancho's does best?
It is kind of aggressive. It's the fact that we know they're building the ships. And, when I've spent some time in ports like St. Thomas and things like that, when I first started cruising in the early 2010s, everybody got off the ship and loaded up the restaurants and loaded up the streets. And, I stay in contact with a couple of the servers that were at St. Thomas, and they said the money's gone down. It's just because of the fact that they build the ships. They build these ships that people are less likely to get off of. These ships are resorts that make it challenging to even enjoy the whole ship in 1 week sailing. So people will think nothing of just staying on the ship. When you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know how awesome and amazing St. Thomas is, you're happy to stay on the ship. Now to the point where they're getting extra egregious and extending their ships onto the municipalities or the cities themselves. It's crazy. But listen, I imagine that they wouldn't get to do that if it wasn't at least partially mutually beneficial for the cities or the countries that they're visiting. So there has to be some sort of deal that's in place. But the overall product, if we're isolating the product, I think it's cool. The cruise lines are going to do it right. My thing was, I want people to understand that there is a major distinction between, when you go on a perfect day, because I think what people say when you're talking about Carnival's Celebration Key, people are trying to tell you, well, don't think of it like Coco Cay. Think of it as like an excursion. So that's sort of like in the middle. Well, I think of it as like Coco Cay. I think of it as like one of those, private island destinations, whether it's Amber Cove. That's what I look at when I see Celebration Key, a place that you're going, and that is the destination. Now, that's important to make the distinction between what that is and these beach clubs, because I know people are going to get off the ship and expect a Coco Cay or a perfect day in Mexico experience at these places, which is just not the case. This is, like you said, it is a beach club experience. It is not theme parks. It is not zip lines. It's not wild and wacky, 8 to 10 restaurant experiences with all this and that. You just have to realize this is a beach club, and you nailed it when you say either the Mr. Sancho's or the Nachi Cocom or that type of experience. I just think it's important for the viewers and listeners and the travelers to understand that those are two very distinct products.
Well, the fortunate thing is, before you could get to go to one of those Royal Beach Clubs, you're going to have to buy a ticket, which hopefully that's going to really make people understand, okay, if my ship's going to Coco Cay, I could just walk off the ship and go to Coco Cay and jump in the pool. That's definitely not what these beach club experiences are about. I think we talked about a few episodes ago that one in the Bahamas there. I think the tickets start like at $150, and it's an interesting thing because obviously your drink package isn't going to work. You're paying the $150 so that you can have drinks and you can have food and you can go to this beach club. But as we were talking about it, I was like, I would love just to see like some of these meetings at these cruise companies, because somebody probably sat there and said, where we're losing money on the port day? We got somebody going to the Grand Colonial Hotel in Bimini or wherever that thing is, or that could be in Nassau, and they're paying money so that they can sit on the beach there and get somebody to bring them drinks and food. Like, couldn't we just buy a beach? And I don't know if that's where this idea is born out of, but it is an interesting, and it brought up an idea in my head. You say, hey, let's go to St. Thomas because there's some really interesting things on St. Thomas to see, or let's go somewhere where there's some cultural significance. But do you think the person that just goes there to go to Megan's Bay in St. Thomas just to sit on the beach and have a drink and eat some food, are they really doing anything that cultural just by being on, you could say, okay, well, this is where Captain Cook came in, or whoever settled Megan's Bay. But, there's probably a good segment of the cruising population that's like, I don't really care what the significance of this island is. I just want to be on a beach in the Caribbean. And maybe that's what Royal Caribbean's taking advantage of, that sentiment.
Sure, but does everything have to be a one-stop shop? If you're thinking about the industry as a whole, in my opinion, the thing works best when the cruise line does what it does, and then it helps with the overall vacation by featuring the place that you're going to. Does everything have to be like, and I don't want to say the word Walmart of cruising comes out a lot, whether it's usually Carnival, but, I think it's nice. If you're the cruise line, I think it's in your interest, your best interest, to make as much money with whatever you can do on the ship, build these nice, beautiful ships, and then feature the places you're going to. They're also making money on these excursions too. They're also making money on every place that they send you to. Do you have to put your big, fat crown and anchor stamp on pieces of land that are at these places? Because if you go in a Royal Caribbean Beach Club, are you really going to Santorini? Do you think so?
Yeah, I mean, no. I in some level, you're going to get the water of Santorini, that kind of thing. But I don't think you're getting an authentic. Maybe they can pull that off. Maybe that's why they're putting it as part of a tour package where you're going to actually do something in Santorini. But again, I don't think people care. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of people, if you could still do cruises to nowhere, I think they would fill those ships up. People would just go knock around in the ocean and enjoy the cruise ship. So, I think they're starting. I think people just want to get away, and I don't know that people are that curious culturally. I think a small part of the population is, but then I think another part of the population isn't. And I think the cruise lines are trying to figure out what that balance is. Because, why cultivate a bunch of cultural experiences when somebody wants to pay $150 to go to a beach club? You know what I mean?
Right.
That's
like your question, what you said about Megan's Bay before. I do think if you get off the cruise ship and you go to Megan's Bay, which is basically synonymous with St. Thomas and, always in that conversations for the world best beaches, I think the answer is yes, you've experienced St. Thomas. But I think if you got off the ship in Santorini and then you immediately got bussed to the Royal Caribbean Beach Club, I think you're basically, I don't know. It's just not as good. It's not as cool of a story to tell when you get back.
I agree, but I'm going to push back because I've sat on the sands of Megan's Bay, and I was unmoved. I didn't feel like I had any connection to St. Thomas. I might be just like a Neanderthal or something, but I was like, oh, okay, here's another beach, whatever.
It is another, it is that, but it's the beach of St. Thomas, and it's also because it's been hyped up, and every Travel Channel documentary you've ever seen has created it to be this absolutely pristine slice of heaven. Of course, you go there and there's only one way to go but down. But
I think when I went up that mountain though, and I had that banana daiquiri at that bar, and then I went out on that terrace and I looked over and I could see all of the Virgin Islands from there. I was like, oh, this is St. Thomas.
Yes.
So it's weird. Like, you just, I don't know. Obviously there's a demand for it, or I don't think they would build it if they didn't think that there was a demand for it. But again, we talk about it big time. It's really hard to critique how people vacation. And obviously these cruise lines probably have a lot of data on what people find to be appealing with their vacations. And I think people like the idea of traveling to another country, but I think there's apprehension for safety and stuff like that. So I think another aspect of these beach clubs, especially like if you think about the one in Nassau, you're going to get off your ship already docked, and then you're just going to stay on the dock and get on a water taxi that's owned by Royal Caribbean, and then you're going to get off at their beach club. And that's a very safe experience, it would seem, right? So I think maybe sometimes people are looking for safety also, which is why. Yeah.
That's very true. And a healthy balance is nice. One day maybe go to on a real deep island tour, or not an island tour, but a nice, gorgeous, authentic, immersive Santorini experience, and then maybe go back again and enjoy the beach club. You could do it all too. That is part of the beauty of why I love cruising.
Yeah, it's tough. I think that's the beauty of cruising, because you really can do it whatever way you want to do it. So, let's see, man. So I think we covered most of the things that are going. There was an oil spill somewhere. Where was that? Galveston or some ship?
Yeah, there was an oil spill.
Because there was
Used a couple of sailings.
Yeah, somehow a tanker hit a dock, threw some oil in the water, and then a princess ship couldn't leave. But yeah, wild times. What do you have? We I don't think we made anybody mad this week, so that's good, right?
I'm sure.
Should we look at the camera one more time? Look at me. Look at me. All right.
How's this look? How's this?
We're doing good. Look, I don't have anything else. You got anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. I think we covered most or all of it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for checking out today's episode. Just a quick reminder again, if you have any questions for us, send an email, questions@cruisetalkweekly.net. And you can reach Tommy and I also if you want to talk to us specifically. Tommy at cruisetalkweekly.net, Tony at cruisetalkweekly.net. We got the email up and running. New YouTube channel. You can look. I'm not saying you're going to get a sticker or anything, but why not be one of the first 100 people to subscribe to the YouTube channel? That way, a few years from now, you can say, "Oh, I remember when." So come over there on YouTube. And of course, if you're listening to us on a podcast, please give us a review. I feel like we got a bad review. No, we didn't get any words, but somebody gave us like a 2-star or something.
Those are the worst, where they don't even explain why.
Yeah. Don't even give me a chance to defend myself. Must have been something I said. All right. How do we end this thing?
And that's all from Cruise Talk Weekly with Tommy
and Tony. And we'll see you next week. Was there an ending? I don't know if there was an ending. We're going to play that outro music, that banging outro music. Here we go.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. We'll see you next week.
And it's a winning, never to lose. When we talk about vacation, though, it's always a cruise. It's Tony and Tommy with a TNT schmooze. Cruise Talk Weekly, and we lighten the fuse.